They also talked about this a particular program that is coming up
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes. What about that babe? Onyikon.
Good morning, sir.
Onyikon, how was your weekend?
Thank you, sir.
Did you go to church?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Did
Yes,
you
sir.
pay your did you pay your offering?
Yes, sir.
What about tithe?
I'm not working class, sir.
No, 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 no. You mean okay. Ah, no. You are supposed to pay. Okay. Did you did you did you get any bonus on your data?
Yes, sir.
Also, I don't know how today will be because I'm in the faculty and there's no light. So let's hope we'll be able to be fine. So I'm using my own data and then I have to go and charge my laptop somewhere so I can be able to talk to you. So let's see. Last week we were doing tax evasion and we look at tax evasion and tax avoidance. Let me see. Opening. Wow. Anyway, so let's we stopped at the examples of tax evasion. I'm trying to open my own laptop. Two or three of those do you have it, Miss Onyekon?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, so let's look at the first example.
Okay, sir. The following are the more common examples of tax avoidance schemes in Nigeria. So the first one, manipulating the marginal tax rate such that a high income bracket taxpayer reduces his tax liability by creating a trust settlement for the benefit of his children or other relations who, if subject to tax at all, is at a low marginal tax rate.
Okay,
Thus, by a well-calculated arrangement of his financial affairs, the rich taxpayer prevents the revenue from taxing the total income in his hands at the high marginal tax rate. Rather, he is now subject to tax at the lowest possible tax rate.
okay. Please, does anybody have the personal income tax act?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you go to the schedule 6 to the personal income tax act? Schedule 6. Do you know how to find the schedule at the back?
Yes, sir.
Can you quickly go there so you can read for us what this
Okay.
question is talking about?
A minute, sir.
Okay.
Right, so.
So this question is saying that there's a rich man who made a certain amount of money and is supposed to be taxed at a certain rate. So he now created a trust for his dependents, his children and his dependents, and put money in those trusts. Therefore, his income now fell low so that it's now being taxed at a lower rate. But let's look at what the tax schedule is saying. You have the schedule 6 with you, ma, sir?
Yes, sir.
Eh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you see where it says the first 300,000?
Yes, yes.
Okay, can you give us now? Everybody listen now. The first 300 is taxed at what rate?
300,000.
Yeah, the first 300,000 is taxed at what? What rate?
It
What
says,
rate? That's
oh, 7. Okay, the rate, the percentage, right?
is 7%. The first 300,000. Are you with me? There's a lady. Can you read for us, please?
Yes. It said first 300,000 at 7%.
Okay. Then what?
The next 300,000 at 11%.
And then what?
Next 500,000, 15%.
Now, what kind of tax is this?
Next,
No, what kind of tax is this? Is it proportional? Is it progressive?
I think this is progressive,
This
I suppose.
is progressive tax. Now, why is it progressive
Yes.
tax? Why is it progressive tax?
Because it increases as the income of the
What is
taxpayer
it?
increases.
What is it? What is it? He said it increase. What is that it?
The income.
The
The
rate.
rate.
So you avoid. That's why I've been saying avoid talking colloquially. You must identify what we're talking about. So the rate of tax increases as the income increases. Now, let me now ask
Yes.
you a question now. If a person made in a year, let's say his income is 1.5 million in a year. So how do you tax him
Yeah.
in Nigeria? So
I'll
out of that 1.5
mix.
million, so out of that 1.5 million, the first 300,000 is taxed at 7%. The next, okay, we have light now.
Yes.
So the next, I need to go get my cable from upstairs. Just hold on, we are still talking. Hold on, let me close it. They just got light. Please just hold on. They just got light. Just hold on, please. Hold on.
We said we don't have here. Wow.
Oh, mommy, I don't get that. So,
Yes. Sorry, they just brought light, so we need to go on. So I was saying, for our example, we are just deviating so that you understand the way income tax works. So we said that under Schedule 6 of personal income tax, the rate is progressive because the tax rate increases as the income increases. So now, I'm not giving an example, assuming a person made 1.5 million in a year, how do we tax him? So we said the statute tells us that the first 300,000 is taxed at 7%. So that means we tax the first 300,000 out of that 1.5 million at 7%. So the next 300,000 is now taxed at 11%. So if you move the first 300,000 from the 1.5 million, we have 1.2 million left. So if you move the next 200,000 now, which is taxed at 11%, we're going to have how much left? 900,000 left. The statute now tells us that the next 500,000 is now taxed at what? 15%. So that means remaining 400,000 out of that 1.5 million. So what's the next rate? The next what? What's the next rate there, Oga? Hello?
The next rate is, sir?
The next rate after the
The next
500,000
rate is 15%. The next
yeah, that's
500%.
500,000. After that,
500,000.
the next
The
500,000
next
again is now taxed.
500,000 is good.
Okay, so the next
90%.
400,000.
19.
So the next 400,000.
500,000.
Okay, hold on now. So now, out of that 1.5 million, next 400,000 is taxed at 19%. But let me ask you now, assume a person made only 300,000 in a whole year, what would be the tax rate?
7%.
The tax rate will be 7%.
What if a person made 400,000? What would be his tax rate? If a person made 400,000,
18%.
No. Out of the 400,000, you first of all tax the first 300,000 at 7%, remaining 100,000. So the 100,000 left will now be taxed at 11%. You understand how it works now?
Oh, yes, sir.
So if a person made 500,000, the first 300,000 is taxed at 7%, and then the remaining 200,000 is taxed at 11%. If a person made 700,000 in a year, 700,000, the first 300 is taxed at 7%, the next 300,000 is taxed at 11%, and then the 100,000 that is remaining is now taxed at 15%. So it's a graduating, it's a progressive tax. Now, coming to our example, this person made a lot of money and then decided, instead of, maybe he now fell into the 22% tax bracket, the highest one. What he did was to create a trust. Have you done trust and equity? Have you done equity? Hello? Have you done
Yes,
equity?
sir. We are doing equity.
We're currently doing equity, sir.
Okay, you can create a trust. A trust is whereby somebody is a trustee and creates a trust for the benefit of the beneficiary. So this person now created a trust so that his income is transferred into the trust for the benefit of the beneficiary, so that by so doing, his income is now reduced because he has created a trust. So he's trying to evade tax, because if he had not created that trust, his income would have been taxed at a high margin. Can you, the next example says what, Mr. Onyekon?
2. Incorporating the taxpayer's sole proprietorship or partnership into a limited liability company, thereby substituting the lower marginal tax rates of the company for the otherwise higher marginal income tax rates of the sole proprietor or the partner.
In Nigeria, under section 41, section 40, sub 1, sub A, the tax rate for small company is 0%. But for individuals, if you make more than, let's say, about 2 million naira, your tax will be 24%. So a person now, instead of paying that 24%, can then create a company. And then the company will pay for all its expenses as the managing director. The company will be paying. So the company, because the company is not making up to 250 million, so the company will not be subject to tax. The company is not making up to 250 million, it will not be subject to tax. But the company now be paying for its expenses. So the reason why I created the company is to evade tax. So that those are instances of evasion of tax, whereby a person is trying to hide his income under another business so as not to pay tax. So let us look at the last one, the third one, so we can go to interpretation of statute.
Third, converting what would ordinarily accrue to the taxpayer employee as income into capital gain, that is compensation for loss of office, to the tax advantage of the employer and the employee. The latter, because he thereby substitutes the lower marginal tax rates applicable to capital gains for the higher marginal income tax rates that would otherwise apply to his taxable income. And the former, the compensation thus paid are allowable deductions for tax purposes.
So now, in this case, this is what happened in the case of Ramsey, the one we saw earlier, Ramsey. Now, under Capital Gains Tax Act, Section 3, the rate of tax is 10%. But we just saw now, under Schedule 6 to Peter, that the rate of tax is what? 11%, 7%, 11%, 15%, 20%, and upwards. So in this case, the taxpayer, instead of getting his income, decided to convert it to capital gains. Decided to convert it to capital gains so that it will now be subject to 10% 10% rate under the Capital Gain Tax Act. And then, even then, the money that is paid to him from the company, it will be a deductible expense. But what I want you to note there is that the taxpayer, instead of being subject to tax at the rate of 22% or 24% under Schedule 6, the taxpayer is now being subject to only 10% because he has converted his income into capital gains. So the first one, the taxpayer created trust for his dependents and was trying to hide his income. The second one, the taxpayer created a corporation. He created a corporation so that the corporation under Section 40, sub 1, sub A, under Sections 40, sub 1, sub A, being a small company, will be paying 0% as tax. Then the third one, the taxpayer was getting his income in the nature of a capital gains, so that the rate of capital gains is 10% instead of being subject to the 22 or 24% under the Schedule 6 of Peter. So in that way, the taxpayer is evading income, although it looks legal on paper, but the intention of doing that was to evade tax. That is tax evasion. So please just hang on. I want to see if the faculty's internet is working. I want to turn off my own data. Just hang on, please.
I can't hear anything. Is it from my network?
He said he wants to connect to the faculty Wi-Fi or something, so that's why he's not speaking at the moment.
Okay, are you back? Hello?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir, you are
Yes,
back.
okay, you are back. All right. So let's go to statutory interpretation. Do you have the documents with you?
Excuse me, good morning, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, I have a question from the topic we just finished.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my question is that I feel like I'm mixing up tax avoidance and legitimate tax planning. So I just
lost
want
you.
clarification.
You said you are sort.
I said
I
I
didn't
feel
get the
like
question.
I'm sort of. Can you hear me, sir?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to understand the real distinction between tax avoidance and legitimate tax planning. So in your material, I saw that tax avoidance was defined as the art of dodging tax without actually breaking the law.
But which now turns out to be no. That's not what you said. Though. Can you actually see what the definition is there?
Yes, sir.
Can you
Let me
read it
read
for
it
me?
out.
Yes, please.
Okay, sir. A moment. A moment, please. I'm trying to track it.
I'm with you.
Okay.
It's on the first page. On the first page, let us look
Yeah.
at the sixth paragraph or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth paragraph. On the
Okay, no,
first
I was
page.
looking at. Yes, I understand that, sir. Can you look
Can you
at
read it?
page 4,
Can you read it?
please?
Can you read it?
Okay. So tax avoidance is an attempt to diminish taxation in a manner which the taxpayer or practitioner believes to be legal.
Which you believe it's the intention, I mean the mind of the taxpayer is that it is legal. For example, we gave an example
Yes,
on
sir.
that day. If a person spent like, the person believed that he spent 182 days in Nigeria, but actually he spent 184 days. Okay? Oh, no. Or the person paid his tax to, Ogun State instead of Lagos State. That is not tax evasion. Although maybe person believe that he should pay the tax in Lagos instead of Ogun State. But it's not legal. It's supposed to pay it in Ogun State. Now, let's go ahead. Let's now go to page 4. What paragraph in page 4?
Okay, sir. Yes. So page 4, that's the 4th paragraph,
Okay. Can you please read it for us?
described as the art of dodging tax without actually breaking the law.
Okay.
So I'm trying to understand that if tax avoidance is the art of dodging tax without actually breaking the law, because based on your explanation, and of course from what it is that you just said, sir, it appears that tax avoidance is the person doing what he believes to be legal, but which is not necessarily legal, right? And while
Yes.
tax planning, legitimate tax planning, based on all the previous cases or by learned Justice Billingshand in the cases that you gave us, Having and Gregory and etc., right? They say that a taxpayer has the freedom,
No, you are
right, to
okay.
structure, has
Okay,
the
what is
freedom to
tax planning?
structure.
What is just tell me what is legitimate tax planning? Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, essentially what I understand legitimate tax planning to be, right, is the manner, right, or the act of the taxpayer ordering and or structuring his affairs, whether it is business or personal finance, etc., right, in such a way that allows him to pay the lowest amount of tax possible, so long as he's doing it within the ambit of the law.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so now what I'm trying to understand is if tax avoidance, based on this definition in number 4, is also the art of dodging tax without actually breaking the law, how exactly,
But
where
on the
exactly
long
do we
run,
then
no. I think
between
let's
tax
let's
avoidance
let's
and legitimate tax planning?
okay. I think if that is what is confusing you, tax avoidance is when a person structures his affairs, okay, believing
Yes, sir.
that he's not breaking the law, but on the long run, he now breaks the law, although the intention was not to evade the tax, but his intention was to minimize the tax or in a legal way, but his assumptions or his legal beliefs or his legal interpretation of the law turned out not to be legal. Okay, so
Okay, sir.
when the word that is used there that with without breaking the law will probably be that without having an intention to evade tax. The sole word I want you to hold on to, because in practice the two of them can conflate. The sole difference I want to conflate, what I want you to note as to legitimate tax planning is that legitimate tax planning is legal, is right, is within the law. Tax avoidance is an intention to minimize tax under a belief that the taxpayer is not breaking the law, but it's actually breaking the law or violating a rule. Whereas tax evasion is an intention, a clear intention to evade the law. So let us please, because in practice, what amounts to tax avoidance and tax evasion can conflate. It's equal to tell you which one is this, which one is that. So, but let us assume that those are the best distinction that we can have. The animus, the intent is what should dictate. The intent, it should be what should be the difference between what amounts to legitimate tax tax evasion and tax avoidance. In our example that we gave, assuming that the person believes that government is going to give some subsidy to corporations, that was the reason why he created the company. That's the third example that we looked at this morning. That government is going to give incentive to corporations. That was why he converted his the sole proprietorship into a corporation. Okay, but it now turned out that he's now trying to shield his interest, his income as a personal person under a corporate structure. So in that case, it will be tax avoidance because he believed that his actions were right, that he was trying to benefit from the tax incentive. But on the long run, it was interpreted that what he did was to convert his business into a corporation so as to avoid tax. That would be tax avoidance. But assuming that he knew that he would not qualify for the incentives, that he actually went to a lawyer and the lawyer told him that he would not qualify for the incentives, but still went ahead and tried to and incorporated and tried to avoid the taxes which he would have paid as a personal person. It can be inferred that he had intention from circumstances to evade tax because there was no legitimate reason for him to have embarked on that endeavor. In the first case, whereas he believed that he was qualified for incentives, so he believed that his action was legal, but it turns out that he was avoiding tax. That would be tax avoidance. But if he actually knew that he would not qualify for any incentives, but the sole purpose was to avoid the tax rate as a personal income person, as a personal person under personal income tax, then that would be tax evasion. So let us assuming there's no other question, let us look at tax interpretation so that we can go back to our income tax again next class. So, Ms. Onyikon,
Yes,
let
sir.
us go to tax imputation.
Okay. Statutory provisions defining income generally.
Okay, we
Section
have
3.
talked about that. Yeah, we have talked about. Read it again. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Section 3 of Peter provides that the following classes of income are subject to tax. Income from inside and outside Nigeria for whatever period of time, gain and profit from any trade, gain and profit from businesses, gain and profit from profession or vocation, salary, wage, fee, allowance, other gain or profit from employment, compensation, bonuses, premiums, benefits, and other prerequisites allowed. Given or granted to any temporary or permanent employee, gain or profit, including premiums, arising from a right granted to any other person for the use or occupation of any property, dividend, interest or discount, charge and annuity, and any profit or gain or other payment not falling in any of the above. For this paper, the phrase under section 3F of Peter that is central to our discussion.
Sorry, 3.1 sub F. 3.1 F. 3 sub 1 paragraph F. Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't worry. We got it.
That is central to our discussion in this paper. That is any profit, gain, or other payment not falling within paragraphs A to E, inclusive of this subsection. This is the omnibus provision that covers all other residual income. In our opinion, based on the rules of interpretation of tax statutes, section 3 sub 1F of Peter must of necessity include illegal income.
Okay, let's go ahead now. So let's look at how does the court interpret that? How do we, the court and the tax practitioners, what are the rules governing interpretation of tax statutes? Go ahead.
Rules of statutory construction of tax statutes. It may be important to mention at this stage that jurisprudentially, Nigerian courts have long taken the general view that tax statutes should be construed strictly. The court in Aderawas Timber Trading Co. Limited and FBIR stated, it is the law that the language of a statute imposing a tax duty or charge must receive a strict construction in the sense that there is no room for any intendment and regard must be had to the clear meaning of the words.
Okay, So the first, in interpreting a tax statute in Nigeria, this is a Supreme Court case. In interpreting a tax statute in Nigeria, the first approach, number one, the first approach is to what? Adopt a strict interpretation. Strict. When it says strict, that means a formal, a hard line, strict, whatever the statute says. In this case, the Supreme Court held in Adirawas, which you will see this case many times, Adirawas, the court said that we must adopt a strict interpretation. There's no room for intendment. We don't know, we don't want to care what, hey, no, this is what was intended. No. The court said no. There's no room for intendment. We are not going to be bothered about what the legislature intended. Oh, Professor Oni wanted us to wear white and black. No, he said white. Whether he made a mistake, whether he forgot to, no. The dean said white. But he said, yeah, when we are discussing, we agreed on white, black. No. This is what he said. It's white. So in interpreting a statute, a tax statute, there's no room for intendment or regard to the what? And the regard must be made to the clear meaning of the words. So in interpreting a tax statute, we adopt a strict, the first approach, the first is to adopt a strict interpretation. What does the statute say? The statute says, if the statute says, section 3(1)(f) says, any other income, that is what we will interpret it to be. So let's go ahead.
This statement of the law followed the decision in the English case of Cape Brandy Syndicate and IRC, where the court, par Rolat J, pronounced, in a taxing act, one has to look merely at what is clearly said. There is no room for any intendment. There is no equity about a tax. There is no presumption as to a tax. Nothing is to be read in, and nothing is to be implied. One can only look fairly at the language used.
Okay, so we see where Adirawas came from. It came from the case of Cape Brandy Syndicate, where Rolat J said what? There's room for intendment, there's room for equity. Oh, it's unfair. Oh, a person that is making 100,000 should not be paying minimum tax of 1%. No, we don't care. The law says that if you make less than 200,000, you pay how much? 7%. Oh, it's unfair. What can 200,000 buy? No, we are not concerned with that. So that's what Adirawas told us, and that's what Kebandi told us. Go ahead. A key
attribute of strict constructionism is that the court entertains no entreaties of equity or empathy, provided the wordings are clear and unambiguous. In other words, it is not the court's business whether the plain language, strictly considered, will yield hardship on the taxpayer or deprive the taxman of revenue. That's Citibank Nigeria Limited and FIRS. If there are gaps or ambiguities, it is not for the court to rectify, but for the parliament through subsequent legislation, FBIR and Integrated Data Services Limited. Strict constructionism is the general approach to interpretation of tax statutes. It is, however, not the only approach. Indeed, the courts have in many instances sidestepped this approach in favor of other approaches. One such alternative is the purposive rule, which regards tax legislation as driven towards tax collection. In essence, such statutes should only be interpreted to suppress tax avoidance and fulfill the purpose of tax collection. The use of this
Okay.
approach in
So
Nigeria,
the second approach, which is divergent to the strict approach, is what we call the purposive rule. The purposive rule. The purposive rule, that's the second approach. So we are seeing two approaches now, the strict interpretation and the purposive rule. The purposive rule is that the tax legislation, okay, are driven to either towards, collection of tax or to assist or that the tax statute must be interpreted only in a way so as to to suppress tax evasion, tax avoidance, and to fulfill the purpose of the tax collection. So the purposive rule says that we must, what is tax? When we look at the benefits of tax, we said it is to raise revenue. So the purposive now says that all tax statutes must be interpreted in a way so that it would now prevent tax evasion, or it will help to assist collection of taxes. So that's what the purposive rule says. Whereas the strict interpretation says that we only look at the language of the tax. Once you look at the language of the tax, no more. Whether it's right or not, we are not concerned. So let's go to the case of mobile.
the use of this approach in Nigeria may be more precisely traced to the case of some earlier judicial authorities, in Mobile Oil Nigeria Limited and Federal Board of Inland Revenue. Bello JSC pronounced as follows: in construing a statute, regard shall be given to the cause and necessity of the act. Then such construction shall be put upon it as will promote its purpose and arrest the mischief which it is intended to deter. Some companies have been manipulating their accounts with intent to hide their true accessible profits, and in that manner have been avoiding tax, which they ought to have paid. The purpose of Section 30 of the Company Income Tax Act is to deter companies from engaging in such fraudulent practice.
Okay, so have you done the mischief rule in your constitutional law?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you identify a mischief. You identify a mischief and you use the statute to block that mischief. So in this case, Bello JSC, as it then was, says that the mischief was because companies were trying to evade tax. So the purpose of the tax, Section 30 of CETA, must be to prevent the mischief, and then we adopt that the purposive rule in this case. Another case is Phoenix.
In Phoenix Motors Limited and NPFMB, the Court of Appeal, Panikitobi JCA, held thus: if a statute is revenue-based or revenue-oriented, it will be part of sound policy for a court of law to construe the provisions of the statute literally in favor of revenue or in favor of deriving revenue for the government, unless there is a clear provision to the contrary. No court of law should lend its hand to a person or body bent on beating the efforts of the government at collecting revenue by relying on technicalities of the law with a frugal aim to cheat government of its legitimate income. SAPM and FIRS.
SAPM, okay. So in this case, both in Phoenix and in Mobile, the court held that the revenue purpose of the tax is important. If a tax is revenue-based, we must interpret it in a way so that tax can be collected. The court cannot be, thrown away on the basis of technicalities. Whereas the Aderawas case and Cape Bandit says what? we must look at the strict interpretation of the tax statutes. Whatever the tax says, whatever the tax statute says, that is what the court must do. So with that second view, go ahead.
The above authorities reflect that in construing tax legislation, Nigerian courts would advance either a strict, literal approach or a purposive approach. While the former looks merely at what is stipulated in the statute, the latter looks at what the statute as a whole seeks to achieve, which in most cases is seen as the collection of tax. The outcome of a given tax case may therefore depend heavily on the approach to construction adopted by the courts of the statutory provision in play.
Okay, so in Nigeria, you cannot be sure which approach the court would take. So the courts have taken either of the two approaches, depending on what the court felt like in particular case. So there are two approaches, the literal interpretation or the purposive interpretation. The interpretation just look at the statute, says no, no, yes, is yes. For example, this is what happened in Echo Drill. Echo Drill versus, that's ECODRILL. You see it in that my paper that I delivered at CITN under the Peter. Some people were expatriates. They were working in the offshore on oil rig that is outside 5 nautical miles from Nigerian coast. So these engineers, they were on the offshore oil rigs. Have you seen oil rig before? Oil platforms in the water, in the sea. How many people have seen oil platform before?
Yes, we have, sir.
You have, okay. So the issue is where are they supposed to pay their tax to? Section 2 sub 2, which we saw before, says that everybody must pay their tax to the state in which they are resident, unless of 4 sets of people. Number 1, military personnel, army, navy, air force, and police. That's what is mentioned in the statute. But the Constitution has recognized Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps. But this Peter does not mention Nigerian Civil Defense Corps. So that's number 1. Number 2, diplomats, Nigerian diplomats that are working in foreign commission, working with foreign commission, they will pay to the federal government. So military people will pay to the federal government. And then number 3, non-resident people that are making income from Nigeria, non-resident. Number 4, people living in Abuja. So the people that are working on the oil platform for 8 months, 9 months, who did they pay their tax to? I want to hear from you. Hello? Hello? Have I lost you? Onyeka, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What about Ridwan?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Sir.
What about Toibat, Abi? What about Chidera? What about
Yes, sir.
Dipo?
Yes.
Dipo. So where should the people that are on the oil rig? They came to Lagos, they now went to Akwa Ibom. From Akwa Ibom, they went on the oil rig for like 8 to 9 months. Number one, are they resident in Akwa Ibom?
I think they pay to federal government.
Eh? What did you say?
Federal government.
Why did you
Said
say
I think
federal
they will
government?
pay to federal government.
Why? What does the law say?
Uh,
Are they military men?
well, according to my own logic, they are
No.
already.
What does hey, hold on. What does Adira was tell us just now?
Sir?
What does the case of Adirawas and Cape Brandy? What does it tell us? What do those two cases? What do they tell us?
We should follow strict interpretation, sir.
Exactly. So tell me in the tax statute where it says that if a person you use logic, this person they are not military men, they are not diplomats, they are not non-residents making income from Nigeria. They are not because they are of the and they are not resident in any state, and they are not living in Abuja.
Well, they could spread the taxes between the states where they worked.
No, they are not even in any state. They are off. See, under international law, Nigeria has continental shelf 5 nautical miles. If you stay at
Yes.
Epe now, or if you stay at Bar Beach, 5 nautical miles, the Navy can patrol. After 5, that belongs to anybody. So if people are on the seas, they are not even on any state. The state doesn't have jurisdiction over it. So where should they pay? So you see now.
That means they are non-residents. They are not.
No.
They'll-
They are. So where are they? If they are non-resident, where are they resident? Which country are they resident?
They are not residents in Nigeria.
Which
It is
country are
outside the
they?
territorial waters of Nigeria.
Which country? Which country are they resident?
That is. Since they are not in the territorial waters of Nigeria, we cannot say they are residents in Nigeria.
I know. Then they must be resident in a certain country. If you are going to be a non-resident,
The countries where they came from. Hello? Hello?
I think he's having a network issue. His tax law back.
Please, is it still off?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't think he's online. No. Can't see his name.
Yeah, he's currently having technical difficulty. Should join us briefly, very soon.
Oh, okay. That's glitches.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, sorry, my computer just went off, so I have to use I just logged on my phone. So that is the position. So does anybody have any questions so far? So in this class, what we have done, we have interpreted we have started with definition of taxes. I'm sure you can define based on Matthew versus Chicory Marketing Board what taxes must be imposed by the government for public benefit to be pecuniary. There was no direct benefit, and it must be in writing. U.S. versus is it Butler and Platt versus Michigan, and then we have seen we went to what look at taxes, user charges, and all that, and then from there we moved to let me see what we moved to. We moved to type of taxes. We look at personal income taxes that are, we look at transactional taxes that are based on transaction, looked at business taxes, then we looked at real estate, property taxes, and we look at import and export. And then from there, we move at tax authority, division of powers, look at federal, state, and federal, state, and local government. And we say local government cannot ordinarily under section 7 sub 5 cannot ordinarily collect tax unless such is there's a law authorizing that by the House of Assembly. And then we looked at the benefits of taxes, and then we looked at categories of taxes.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Yes.
The what we were talking about the last time before you went off, it did not reach a conclusion. Who would the expatriates would be paying their tax to?
Okay. They will pay to federal government.
Okay, sir.
Because not because the statute is clear, because the court adopted, if you look at that case, the court adopted a purposive interpretation of tax, of the personal income tax, the pay regulations, and said that because they are, a person must be resident somewhere before it will be subject to tax. So the court now said because the head office from which they are posted from was in Akwa Ibom, therefore the tax could be collected from Akwa Ibom. But so subsequent to that, in 2011, the Tax Act was amended to say that where more than 50 employees, where a person has where a taxpayer has lived in more than 2 or 3 jurisdictions, to be sure to pay tax in the nearest corporate headquarters with more than 50 employees. So that amendment came at the back of this decision because of the quagmire that the court faced in this case as to who would collect the taxes. Akwa Ibom wanted to collect, but they are not resident in Akwa Ibom, and they have spent more than 6 months outside the Akwa Ibom. They were on the continental shelf in the sea. But they should not evade tax if all their colleagues that are on land, inland, are paying tax, so they should pay tax. So the court held that they should pay the tax to federal government. So I was talking about where we came from. Then we look at sources of tax laws. And then we look at the ideal principles of tax. We look at tax evasion and avoidance and legitimate tax planning. We look at rules of interpretation, the strict rule, and the purposive rule. Then we started with personal income tax. So today we have 22 minutes more. So last time we are going back to this thing again, personal income tax, which we started from the last time, 411. Okay, let me open it. So can't remember. Yeah, 411.
Sorry, sir, please, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you. Sir, please, tax, you mentioned these 3 questions that we treated. You said tax avoidance. Was there any law that, is there any law that emphatically states that they are tax avoidance schemes, or it was like construed by court?
Section 17 of Peter. Do you remember what section 17 of Peter says? Do you have your materials on tax avoidance? You still have it with you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, is this read one?
Yes, sir, it is read one.
Okay, my brother. So if you go to that material, you see where section, if you go to that statutory, I think it's on GAAR, General Anti-Avoidance Rules.
Okay.
It says that where the tax authorities is of the opinion that the taxpayer tax arrangement is either artificial or fictitious, the tax authorities is empowered to reconstruct the tax arrangement that the taxpayer has made in a way that would either subject him to more taxes or to disregard the entire tax plan, scheme that he has presented. In this case, the taxpayer, if these people are resident in Lagos, the Lagos Inland Revenue Service can disregard either the setting up of the trust or the incorporation of the company or the capital gains and say no. In fact, it has happened before. Let me give you an example in Lagos State before we go on. Under the Pension Reform Act 2014, Pension Reform Act, we shall get there soon, a person who's working for an employer, a taxpayer who's working for an employer, is obligated to contribute at least 5% of his income into his pension, and the employer will contribute not more than 10% of the income into a pension. So if a person is making 5 million naira in a year, 5 million naira in a year, the tax, it will contribute 5% of that into pension. So the remaining will be taxable. The pension will not be taxable. And then the tax, the employer too can contribute some. So, but if the taxpayer wants to do more than 5%, he can do more than 5%. He can go to his employer and say, no, I don't want to contribute only 5%. I want to contribute 8%. All the 8% will not be subject to tax. So let's assume, let's make it simple now. Let's say the guy is making 1 million naira in a year. If the guy is going to contribute 5% of 1 million naira, that would be how much? 20 from 1 million, that would be 50,000. So he will contribute, if the employee wants to contribute 50,000 to his pension, that will be 50,000. So the remaining 900, sorry, the remaining 900,000.
950,000.
Okay, so the remaining 950,000 will be subject to tax instead of the entire 10 million. Let's say the taxpayer is not contributing anything to tax. He will pay tax on the 1 million, but because he's contributing 5%, 50%, 50,000 to pension, so only 950,000 is only tax. But the taxpayer now can choose to contribute more than 5%. Let's say it's contributing 99%. That means 90%. That means 90,000 will not be taxed. So we pay tax on 910,000. So the smart taxpayers now. So in 2023, the guy will contribute 90%, 9%, which will be 90,000. So he will not pay tax on 90,000. So after that has gone, the guy will now go to his pension administrator in 2024 and say, please, I want to collect 40,000 out of that 90,000 that I contributed. So he will now take that 40,000 tax-free. Whereas if he did not contribute that 9%, the 40,000 would have been subject to tax as part of his income. But the guy is smart. He claimed it as a pension, which is not subject to tax in 2023. And then after everybody has forgotten about it, he now went back and collected the 40,000 from his pension fund administrator. So that is a tax avoidance scheme. So he didn't actually want to contribute 99% to his pension fund. He wanted to contribute only 5%, but he only lied so that he can add another 4% and go and take it back from the pension administrator later on. So the LRS now came and said, no, the 9% that he claimed is set aside under section 17 of Peter. He will pay tax on 950,000. So that's a tax planning. We can be set aside under section, that's a tax avoidance scheme or a tax evasion that can be set aside under section 17. So that's the statutory authority for all those transactions. The tax authority under section 17 of Peter is allowed to disregard those tax schemes. I think that's another question. Somebody was clicking there. So last time.
Sir, please, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
When we were discussing the common examples of tax evasion and avoidance, for number 2, you mentioned section 40 sub 1 sub A of, I didn't get the act that you mentioned.
Of CETA.
Okay, CETA.
That's what under section 40 sub 1 of CETA, companies income tax. There are three types of rate for companies. There is small companies with turnover of 250 million and below. They are subject to 0 tax. There's medium company with company between 250 million and sorry, strike that. Sorry, let me start again. Sorry. There are small companies. There are small companies. Company with 25 million naira and below. They have zero tax. There are companies with of 20 between 25 million and 100 million. They pay 20%. They are called medium company. Company that have 100 million naira in turnover. They are called large company. They pay 30%. So that's section 40 sub 1, paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C. Paragraph A says that if a company has a turnover of 25 million and below, it is 0% tax. If a company has turnover of between 25 million and 100 million, that's 99 million, 999,000. They pay 20%. If the company has more than 100 million in turnover, they pay 30%. So I'm now saying that if this guy who's taxed under the Schedule 6 of PITA, personal income tax, his tax is 22% or 24%, he now converts his company to a small company with 35 million naira and below as turnover, whereas he has 0% tax. And same company is now paying for his expenses, he's trying to evade tax. 40 sub 1, paragraph A of company's income tax. So we were looking at, so let's go to our material in which we were looking at section 10 sub 1 before we went off. Does anybody remember what, or is there any other question again? So that we start tomorrow on that section 10 sub 1. Is there any other question again?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I just wanted clarification on the sixth schedule part that you talked about. So if I'm earning 1.5
have you opened it? Have you opened it? Have you opened it?
Yes, I have it with me.
Okay. You have it. Okay,
So
all right, go ahead.
if I'm earning 1.5 million as a person, why is the government taxing
In a
me
year?
for every single? Yes, in a year. Why is the government taxing me for every single, like the first 300,000, second 300,000?
Because Nigeria has
tax me as a lump sum?
Because that's what we just saw now in Aderawa's case and Cape Brandy. If you have any problem with the tax, which state are you from?
I'm from Oyo State.
Ah, okay. So is this Senator Teslim Adesina? Who is the senator from your state?
Sorry?
The senator from your area. Is this Senator Teslim?
I don't know.
So you should put this in writing and send the senator from your state. Ask him that he should change the law. So if the law says it, the reason we don't know we don't know why, but I think I know why. Nigeria, in the personal income tax rate, Nigeria adopted what we call a progressive system of tax, so that you pay as your income, as the taxpayer, a taxpayer pays the rate of the tax as the income increases. The law recognizes that fingers are not equal. So people are making more than the others. So the more you make, the more taxes you pay. That is why the law is like that. I think that is the reason behind that. So if you don't like that law, you find the senator from your state and tell him that you want one single tax, 10% for everybody. And I think that will not work.
No, it's not. I don't even have a problem I don't even have a problem with the progressive tax system, but I was thinking it would be like a 300,000, you have 7%, and then let's say that 3.2 million is 24%. That's no problem. But I'm saying like it is as you increase, like you just keep on taxing the next one and the next one, next one. Or am I getting that correctly?
Yeah, if you have, so let us read it again. Because some people are not making us, you know, the cleaners in the faculty here,
Yeah.
They make 30,000 a month.
Wow.
They make 30,000 a month. You know that fat one in the car garage?
No.
In the faculty of law here, there's a woman that directs the traffic in the garage, in the car parking lot here. There's a fat woman there. You know her?
Yes.
Yes,
One
we
day I
know
talked
her.
to her. She makes like 30,000 a month.
That's wickedness.
No? If you don't like it, you quit and then go to another place now.
But it's below minimum wage, sir.
Well,
it's below minimum, and minimum wage is a law.
But she's not, hold on, sir. As the time I talked to her, she's not a permanent staff. She's a staff of Faculty of Law. And there's a minimum number of employees that you must have that will be subject to minimum wage. Okay? But assuming that you see 30,000, assuming that you see 30,000, that is how much in a year? 300,000 plus. That's 360,000 in a year. So she'll be paying 7% depending on, because we haven't done we do the consolidated, later on at the end, we do look at what we call consolidated relief allowance. But just at our glance now, at the first glance, she'll be paying 7% on the first 300,000 and 11% on the next 60,000. That's what the law says. But then she's entitled to certain relief, consolidated relief allowance. We're going to see that later. And then there's a minimum wage, minimum tax under Section 37, which is 1%. So I think she'll be paying 1,600 as tax every year, because she's entitled to 200,000 CRA consolidated. So that will CRF, that will be 200,000 minus 360. That will leave 160,000. And the law says that if you are making minimum tax, if you don't have any tax at all, then you'll be paying 1% of your income. I think 1% of 160,000 will be 1,600. I'm sure you can pay for her. So your question is, why not give a certain? Is your question why not tax at a percent for everybody? Is that what your question is, Ma?
My question, yes, it was kind of like, why not tax instead of like compounding it? Instead of 300,000 will be 7%, then the next like the next 60,000 will be at 11%. Why not just have like a fixed rate?
No, it's not gonna work.
I just realized that from your example.
Because you now, when you become a lawyer now, when you start working for Bowen, you'll probably be making like 900,000 a month. And she's making 30,000. So your income will be 900 times 12. That will be like about maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 million naira a year or something. You can't be paying 10%. Why she's paying 10%? No. You'll be eating turkey, you'll be eating liver and intestine. And she'll be taking gari and kuli. So you cannot. It's not fair. So it has to be progressive so that all of us can pay, all of us can be accountable to what we are eating. So we have only 5 minutes left. If there's no other question. Any other question?
So, yes, I have a question, sir.
Yes.
Please, can you explain the preamble under tax income rates? That's before they started explaining like first 300,000 at 7%.
Okay, can
Should
you
I
read
read
it
it
for me?
out? Okay,
Yes,
they
please.
said graduated tax rates with consolidated allowance of 200,000.
Okay, consolidated relief allowance.
Okay, relief allowance of 200,000 plus
200,000,
plus 20% of gross income, subject to a minimum tax of 1% of gross
Okay, now
income,
hold on
whichever is
now. Let's
higher.
okay now. So let's come back to the example that the first lady gave. So let's say this person is making 360,000 a year. What is okay? Can you put on hand there and go to section 33? What does section 33 says?
Of Peter.
Yes.
Okay.
Put your hand in that schedule 6 and quickly go to section 33. Because we don't have time.
1 second.
It says there shall be allowed something like that.
Go ahead. That shall be allowed.
Okay, there shall be allowed a consolidation relief allowance of 200,000, subject to a minimum of 1% of gross income, whichever is higher.
Subject to what?
Plus 20%. Subject to a minimum of 1% of gross income.
So everybody. So what is 1% of? Okay, go ahead.
Gross income, whichever is higher, plus 20% of the gross
Okay,
income,
now
and the
plus
balance
20%.
of.
Okay, hold on. So what is 1% of 360,000?
That's 360.
That's 3,600.
Okay, between 200,000 and
600.
3,600, which one is higher?
200,000.
Okay, so this person is making 360,000 is entitled to 200,000 to be deducted as a CR, a consolidated relief allowance. So that is how much? 360 minus 200 give you how much?
160.
Okay. The person again is entitled to 20% of 360. What is 20% of 360? Can somebody quickly tell 20%?
That's 72,000.
72,000.
7,000.
20% of. Okay.
And
So 160 minus 72,000. That would be 2 minus. That's 8. 7 minus 16. That would be 98,000.
98,000. Yes.
98,000. So that means at the end of the year, this person is be taxed according to that preamble that woman read for us. So a person will have a gross income first. That person is entitled to deduct 200,000 or 1% of the gross income, whichever is higher. So we say in this case, 1% is 1,600. So 200,000 is entitled to. Then in addition, again, that person is entitled to deduct another 20%. Then that is what is going to be taxed on. Because 90% of tax, income is now 98,000. Okay, 98,000. So 7% of 98,000 will be tax. Seven percent of 98,000 will be a tax. But assuming that after deducting the 200,000 and deducting the 20% again, that person has nothing at all, that that person is subject to 1% minimum tax. So assuming the person is making 200,000 in a year, assuming it's possible, that's what it's making. So if you once you deduct the 200,000, then that person has no income. That's zero. No, assuming the person is making 200, let's say 200,000, not confuse us. 200,000. So if you deduct the 200,000, then that person has zero. So they now said, well, if the person has no income at under section 37 minimum tax, that person will have to pay 1% of that, the original gross income. That is 2. Is it 2 naira or what? 1% of that's that's 2,000 naira. 1% of 2,000 naira. So if the person has no tax at all, that is 2,000 naira. Minimum tax, section 37. So that's what that preamble is telling you. The preamble says that you look at the gross income. Then you deduct 200% or 1%, whichever is higher. And then you give that person another allowance of 20% of the gross income. If the person has no income at all, then the person is subject to 1% minimum tax. We will get there. Are you confused?
Yes, I'm very confused actually.
Okay, we have exhausted our time. We'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay, all right.